Hi everyone. Today's video is going to be about a challenge I set for myself, a 30-day challenge that I set 6 days ago, almost a week ago. I'm recording this on April 22nd, and I started the challenge on April 16th. I'm pretty excited to be making this video, not only because this is a pretty interesting topic, a pretty interesting challenge I set for myself, but also because I've gained a lot of subscribers recently. I went up to 11 subscribers from 4 subscribers. I set a goal in the last video that maybe I could get to 15 subscribers by the end of the month, and it looks like I might actually reach that goal. So that's pretty cool. So anyways, this challenge I set for myself is a 30-day challenge where I'm going to be starting conversations with one woman a day on my college campus for 30 days in order to reduce my level of approach anxiety, improve my charisma, and just get better at starting conversations, opening when approaching. So to provide some background, I actually haven't done much cold approach. I've done like 5 cold approaches and I didn't get any results, but 2 or 3 of these were had weird circumstances that made them not favorable as far as odds go. I haven't really gotten any results out of approaching, which is not surprising because I've done only 5. And I think for 2 of those, there were weird circumstances that made the odds of me getting a number lower. So these 5 approaches I've done, they're not a good sample size as far as like my game or like level of attractiveness or SMV. Because I think for one of them, I went up to a girl and I said, "Excuse me," but she thought that I was just trying to pass by her. But I counted that as an approach because my definition of what an approach is like if you just go up with the intention of turning it into something. So I counted that as an approach. And another one, I think I approached a girl and it turns out she was like 15 or something. So that was a little strange. But I'd say the other 3 were just straight up clean rejections. Like the 5th approach I did actually made me quit cold approach up until now. I haven't done a single cold approach since September because of this approach where I just blew out the set. I approached this girl on like a trail or something, and there were people around, of course, but I had like some really bad approach anxiety, so I was like walking kind of behind her, beside her for like a minute or 2. I said like, "Can I say something?" And she looked at me, she was like, "What?" And then I said, "I think you're gorgeous." And she just got really uncomfortable and she turned the other way and just like walked the other direction. So yeah, that's what we would call a blowout approach. That was just like an approach that went pretty badly. And I can't say I was really prepared for that. You know, people online act like these kind of things are rare, but they're common, especially if you're just starting out and you're not the most charismatic or calibrated. Like I know that was not the best situation to approach or the best way to approach, but like I wasn't even being that much of a creep or anything. I was just, doing what a beginner might do. Yeah, that girl was just a complete bitch, and I was pretty upset after that, so I just kind of gave up for a while. And then after that, I downloaded dating apps, and I've gotten some results from dating apps. I've gone on, I think, 4 dates in total. I've had Tinder, Hinge, and Facebook dating downloaded since September. I've only gotten dates off of Hinge and Facebook dating. Tinder is just like super rigged. Tinder, if you're not in like the top 5% or something, if you don't have like either really good pictures, really good looking, or both, you're not really going to see many results on Tinder. So like, yeah, I definitely haven't gone on a date from Tinder, and I don't think I will unless I get like really good pictures, which is hard. But Hinge is better, and so is Facebook dating, which people don't really talk about because you could send messages with your like, and that's what I've been doing. That's the strategy I've been using. I've been sending messages. I've been using good original openers, not boring like shit like "hi" or "how are you" like most guys do. Just, some pretty interesting openers. I just have like 5 or 6 default openers, and then maybe I'll use like an original one, like a customized one. So yeah, I've been on 3 dates from Hinge and 1 from Facebook dating. So yeah, that's some pretty decent results on dating apps, I think, because I think I'm using a pretty good texting strategy. So 4 dates so that was in February. So 4 dates in like 5 months. The last day was in February. I haven't had anything since then, but in 5 months, I guess 7 months now because it's April. That's pretty decent. Like that's probably better than what the average guy gets who's on the apps. The average guy probably doesn't really get anything on the apps. It's still a little slow for me because I'm not getting any leads from real life. And the 4 dates I've been on, none of them have led to a second date because I probably don't have the best game on the dates. And something I've learned is that you have to escalate more than I thought you had to. You know, I knew that you couldn't have a date that's just completely platonic, but like you really have to make some sort of move on the first date. You don't even have to like kiss her or like sleep with her, but like you have to do something, you know, or else you're just going to be filtered out. And I've learned that the hard way. So yeah, I've decided that I need to prioritize real life more. And I've known that I have to cold approach for a long time, but I kind of just lost motivation because I thought that the apps could work for me temporarily, and maybe I could work on cold approach later when I have maybe some more free time or something. But I think I have more than enough free time to cold approach. I'm just scared for the most part, and I lost motivation because I realized it wasn't the only way I could get results. So when I first started out approaching, this was back in August when I did my first ever approach, I took the strategy of just throwing myself in the deep end. Like I didn't do any of that progressive desensitization thing. I did my first approach, and it was literally just an approach. It was literally, I went up to a girl and I asked her out. Like I said, hey, I have a question. And she said, yeah. And I just said, would you be interested in doing blah, blah, blah with me? So I literally just went up to a girl and I asked her out, which is about as direct as you can get. And yeah, that obviously didn't work. But I went up and I did my first ever approach, and I bit the bullet, you know, I ripped the Band-Aid off. I didn't do that progressive desensitization stuff. But the problem with it was that I was relying not on consistency, but more just like temporary motivation. So I would literally go outside and I would walk around for hours, and I would pass by girls and I would just take forever. And then one moment I just decided, you know what? I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to go do it. I'm tired of walking around like an idiot. I'm going to go approach. And it kind of worked. And I'm really glad that I, you know, did some direct approaches, and I showed that I have enough, you know, balls to do that, enough courage. But still, it wasn't really the best strategy because I wasn't consistent with it. Some days I just decided like I felt like I could do it. And the other days I was like the vast majority of days I was like, I'm not doing this. It's too scary because I'm scared of rejection, like most guys are. I still am. So I decided that the progressive desensitization thing is the best thing to do. I think that indirect openers are better than direct openers. When I was starting out, I prioritized direct openers because honestly, I found them less anxiety inducing than indirect openers because I was kind of ripping the Band-Aid off right there. And then like, you know, part of me probably felt like it was almost better to just like get the rejection over with and like have a 30-second conversation that most likely will lead to rejection as well. So yeah, these all ended before 30 seconds. But when I say 30-second conversation, I mean like maybe I could start out with an observational, like indirect opener and then say, anyways, I thought you were cute. And then she would be like, oh, sorry, I'm not really interested, which is not a bad rejection. I had one rejection like that where the girl, I opened her and she seemed like she appreciated the compliment. And I tried continuing the conversation and she was just like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm not interested. And I think there was really nothing I could do there because I felt like maybe I just wasn't her type or she didn't find me good looking enough, most likely. So the reason I think indirect openers are better than direct, and I actually changed my mind about this, let's say in like the past month or so, is because indirect openers allow you to do more volume if you have approach anxiety because there's some plausible deniability there. You don't have to go up and immediately get to the scary part of showing intent. But most likely once you're actually in the set, showing intent will be a lot less scary. It'll be a lot less scary when you're already talking to a girl to say, hey, could I get your phone number? Or like, hey, I actually thought you were cute. It'll be a lot less scary than when you're just going in on the open. So it's going to increase the number of conversations you can start. And that's been true for me so far, obviously, because I've started conversations every single day with just indirect openers. And I don't actually view these conversations I'm starting as necessarily being an approach. I view them as more me starting a conversation. And if I read signs of interest, I could go for it. But really, it's just about practicing opening conversations, just starting conversations, just getting my foot in the door and then deciding what to do from there. And I've already noticed I hesitate a lot less now than when I first started to just say something, to just start a conversation. It's a lot less scary now to just start a conversation with a woman. And I'm only starting conversations with women I find attractive. So I'm not just going up to ugly women and starting conversations. I'm going up to women that I'd be interested in actually approaching. And part of that is just because if I see some signs of interest in these very short interactions, I could push it forward and then it could actually lead to something. So part of this is that I think there's a decent chance that I'll get some results within these 30 days. As far as like maybe I'll ask for a few numbers and get a few numbers, or at least one number. Maybe that'll happen. I'll have to update you guys on what happens with this challenge. I can already start to feel the changes. I can already start to feel my anxiety around opening is a lot less. And even conceiving of the idea of approaching a girl and going in direct isn't as scary anymore. Like it feels a lot more feasible, and I feel like I could do it with some consistency now if I just get a little bit more of this practice in. So I view this as mostly practice, not as me aiming to get results. So to give you guys an idea of what these interactions look like, I'll give you the rules I'm using. So I have to approach a girl on campus who I haven't talked to before, who's a complete stranger, and start a conversation. That's basically it. I have to go up to her and start a conversation when there's nothing compelling me to start a conversation. There's no default reason for us to interact. So I'm just going up there and saying something just for the sake of saying something. So this could be asking a girl for the time, or asking a girl when a certain thing, a certain place closes, or something like that. Or making a comment about how loud it is, or just complaining about some sort of inconvenience about the dining hall or whatever. Just situational or just like default conversation starters. It's like I heard a girl talking about the weather. I heard a girl talking about how it was strange that in the middle of the day it was actually colder than it was in the morning. And I said, yeah, I don't know why it's colder later in the day. That's weird. And she agreed. Something like that. So these are very basic interactions, but it's still important because when you interact with a woman, especially a young, attractive woman, when you're around the same age, there's a decent chance she thinks that you're hitting on her, right? Most of the time when you're talking to just like a random girl in public, when you don't have a particular reason to, unless you're like super extroverted, it's because you're somewhat interested, right? Unless it's just like a super practical question, like what the time is, right? But even then, that could just be an indirect opener. And I could kind of feel the energy that a lot of the girls I've been talking to have felt that, I don't know, maybe he is trying to approach me, you know? So it's almost good that there's that kind of, you know, some doubt in her mind about whether this is just a platonic interaction. It means that I'm actually putting pressure on myself to show a little bit of intent. That's a little bit of intent, is starting a conversation with a girl. That shows that you want to interact with her. And the main reason you're going to want to interact with a girl who's the same age as you is because you find her attractive. I think the best part of this new strategy is the consistency it brings, because I haven't been consistent with talking to women in real life. I've done it here and there, but I'm not a very social person. I'm pretty introverted. So I'm not just striking up conversations with women and socializing with them in a normal, natural context like many guys will. I'm every so often trying something with a girl I find attractive. But this has greatly increased in the amount of exposure I have to women. So I'd say at the current rate, I'm talking to a new woman way more often than your average guy is. I'm interacting with a new, different woman way more often than your typical guy who resides in his social circle, in his own social bubble, and doesn't really leave it. I'm talking to a new woman daily. I'm not just socializing with people that I already know. I'm actually going up to women and approaching them. I'm starting conversations with new women, not women I already knew. And by the end of this, I'll have talked to 30 new women, which is a lot. That's a large number. That's probably the amount of new women that your average guy talks to in like 6 months or something like that. This is going to be pretty beneficial, I think. I have some pretty high hopes about this challenge. And In the meantime, I'm also going to be trying actual approaches. I'm not going to be approaching women on the street or at parks because I think that if I live on a college campus, then it's probably better to just approach on the campus somehow because there's a little bit of familiarity. There's a little bit of like default reason to interact, which will make it a little bit easier. And also the women will be around my age and more likely to be attractive. So I'm actually going to approach some girls from my classes probably is the main thing, which I already did try. I went up to a girl from my class and I went in indirect, but I could tell she wasn't really interested. So I kind of backed off. And I was disappointed about that. But I'm going to try again. I'm going to do some volume with women from my classes. I'm just going to approach a woman from one of my larger like lecture hall classes where, poisoning of the well is less likely. And I'm going to see how that goes. And I'm going to be looking for some like a little bit of like choosing signals, not overt choosing signals, but like if a girl's like kind of looking at me, she probably thinks I'm like good looking or something, then I would go for that. Obviously, I'd prioritize that, but I don't necessarily need some sort of signs or choosing signals. I'll just go for a woman I find attractive. And with this, I'll realize as this goes on, my brain will start to realize that this isn't really super risky. This isn't risky at all. Approaching isn't risky. It just feels risky because of our evolution, because when we were tribes people, if you approached the wrong woman in your tribe and you embarrassed yourself, there's a good chance you wouldn't pass on your genes or you'd get killed by her dad or like her husband or something like that. But there's no chance of that in the modern world because we live in a liberal democracy. Thank God. We live in a society where you can talk to as many strangers as you want and it's not really an issue. I'm just going to go for it. And I'm going to let you guys know how this thing goes, how it goes with the 30-day conversation starting challenge and how it goes with approaching girls from my classes or maybe on campus. Who knows? I'm going to let you guys know how this goes and see if I can offer some advice to people who haven't done this yet. Because while I don't have great game, I can still teach it to people who are at a lower level than me, Let's say by the end of this, I kind of reach an intermediate level of game or something like that. Then I could teach someone who's like just a complete beginner, for example, about how this stuff kind of works because I have a little bit of experience under my belt. So I'm a little bit more experienced than some guys who have no experience at all. I'm getting a better idea of what works. And that's the main goal of this. It's just to get more calibrated, get more charismatic, and just work on anxiety as well. Work on approach anxiety. I'd say this is definitely a form of self-improvement.